We're about to get started. If everyone could just come back to their seats. And we're going to start our second panel of the evening, which is When Stories Lead, Systems Follow, Human-Centered Storytelling for Change. And this conversation is going to be centered around storytelling as a form of civic and cultural power. My name is Candice Fortin. I am the senior strategist at 350.org, which is a global climate justice organization. We are going to be piloting this year a 3-year campaign called the 4R Network, which stands for Response, Resilience, Resistance, and Recovery. We are going to be testing the hypothesis that extreme weather events and the memories of survivors can be a catalyst for systemic change and civic engagement. And I'm honored to be in conversation today with storytellers who have built work uplifting the stories of extreme weather survivors to raise awareness and bring about critical change. So first we have Sierra Kos, who is the executive director of Extreme Weather Survivors. We have Victor Tadashi Suarez, the co-director of the short film Still Standing that just premiered at Sundance today. And we have Max Walker-Silverman, the director of Rebuilding, which is now streaming live on Apple TV. So let's go ahead and kick it off with Victor. Victor, can you tell us more about Still Standing and what led you to creating the film?
Sure. So thanks so much for having me here. So I made this short doc. It's 10 minutes long. It's called Still Standing, and it's about the aftermath of the fires in Los Angeles. It looks at the homes that didn't burn down, that were never touched by fire, but that are contaminated with toxic smoke. And so, you know, we live in LA, where maybe, I made this with my partner, Olivia, we live maybe 20 minutes away from Altadena. And once the initial news cycle sort of moved on, covering the initial fires, we started hearing these stories about these homes that, yeah, were never touched by fire, but the residents couldn't move back in because the homes were testing positive for arsenic and lithium and asbestos and lead and cyanide. And the insurance companies were basically, for the most part, telling them, you know, we're just gonna like wash your bedding, clean your sofa, and you can move back in. And they weren't getting any help from the government either. So we wanted to tell the story of these people's struggles that felt basically invisible. And we felt like it's a very urgent problem because, you know, these kinds of wildfires, these urban wildfires, they're a new phenomenon, and they're only going to become more common, unfortunately, as time goes on. And there's very little information that we know about the long-term consequences. So yeah, we wanted to just tell these people's stories about the struggle that felt largely invisible. And I just want to say, like, it's over a year from the wildfires now, and most of the participants from our film, they're still displaced. Like, they still haven't moved back home, and their homes are still like a time capsule of January 7th. Like, they're still waiting for help. So this problem is like very much still ongoing. Yeah.
And now we're going to check out a trailer from Still Standing.
I've been hearing stories from other fire survivors, like in Colorado and Paradise and all those big fires, where they did go back and they started feeling sick and their pets started dying and they started getting weird cancers. I'm really scared about that happening.
All right. Yeah, that's a really it feels dystopian, but it's real life. It's what's happening right now. Okay, so I'm going to kick it to Sierra, and if you could just share us more about your work and the mission of extreme weather survivors, and also just curious about what you've learned working directly with survivors, as that's a core part of your work.
Yeah, so a quick bit about me. I came up sort of as a filmmaker, humanizing wonky policy through video. So I actually had a documentary film premiere in 2020 at Sundance while I was 7 months pregnant. Very different time for me. But I was sort of still in that lane of work, and I had a personal experience where, with my first child, a newborn, I ended up having to drive through a fire. And it was sort of this just moment in my life where it felt like things are different. There are these really novel, new, extreme weather events, and that is the way in which Americans are going to feel tangibly climate change. And so I have a tendency to become obsessive, and I really became obsessive with, okay, so the fastest growing population in the US and world are people harmed by extreme weather, and that's only going to increase. And who is organizing and mobilizing them? And the resounding answer was that there's these incredible local grassroots groups, and then there's incredible climate groups, but never the two shall meet. And so I'd never run a nonprofit, but had a dream. And so we're a new nonprofit. We're really only about a year and a half old, but we had some pretty big early wins. We really focus less on starting a conversation with climate change and more of, when people were catastrophically harmed by this stuff, can we show up first? How can we help you? What do you need? Can we connect you to other fire survivors or past flood survivors to build that connective tissue? And so we're in the process of building a pretty amazing national network of people harmed by fires, flood, hurricane, extreme heat. And I think what's really beautiful about it really is, these are not lefty climate activists. These are people directly impacted who do vote, don't vote, maybe have voted for Trump, that are working together because they're in this fraught instance. And a bit more about us is just the most recent work, relevant work, is that we've worked a ton with parents who've lost children in the Texas floods. We've organized with hundreds of survivors out of the LA fires, built sort of community art installations, built for some advocacy tools. I'm most proud that we've deployed over $1 million in small dollar grants for folks who really need it, and really centered on support groups and building some disaster mentorship. I think one of the messages I just wanted to lead with this on this panel is I had never worked in climate previously, and there's incredible organizations in the climate movement, but I sort of find that there's this over-index on educating people, talking to politicians, and talking to reporters. And for me personally, I'm moved by story. And so our organization, just by the nature of the way that I process the world, is interviewing people and capturing testimonials. And so I think what I really love that our organization focuses a lot on we're building a database of hundreds, if not thousands, of real human stories that are not climate stories. They're stories of drama, of thrillers, of people who are hilarious. Someone in our network is Ronnie's a used car salesman out of Long Island who serves you Chardonnay. The second you meet him, he's a total character, and voted for Trump, and also now talks about global warming because he lost his house to a flood. And so I think our organization is really, really interested in being in community with filmmakers and sort of having a sense of what does it mean to work with the creatives, the artists, to tell good stories first, and how that can move culture and policy. Because right now, traditional media and politicians are not enough. Yeah, we capture literally thousands of hours of interviews with folks. So we put together a little reel of just like some people from the network that we work with, and I hope it will give you a taste of who we are.
Cool. We can go ahead and run that clip.
It was raining like nobody's business, and I said, I just don't have a good feeling.
I lived in Phoenix, Arizona when I lost my husband to heat stroke. It's been pretty isolating. When we have enough of these stories, the dots start to connect.
I went through Katrina. I've never seen that much water flowing like that in my life.
Fire just grew. It became like a uncontrollable monster.
We could see houses going through the water. We could hear people yelling, screaming, things snapping, breaking.
Mom and I called each other and made our goodbyes. Like we just knew we were all gonna die. And then we didn't.
You touch things on the way out and you think, I'll get them tomorrow. You just don't believe you're not coming back.
Look at the destruction that was caused by a hurricane in the mountains. I said when they named this hurricane Helene, she was hell on earth. I'm just saying.
God is not punishing us. It's people that made decisions that has not been held accountable that is hurting us.
We found, weirdly, a jar of honey that had been on the counter. It was completely unbroken, all the way on the other end of town.
I mean, lodging was very expensive at first. It's expensive to be homeless, girl.
I'm just another little guy against a big, enormous corporation. Well, I will find a way to fight you.
I pulled the fence posts out like Hulk. Like, I was so mad. I was like, I'm not paying someone $1,000 to do this.
The idiots that they brought out here, I said, look, man, if you can't start that brand new chainsaw, you don't need to be here. So I ran him off.
Don't forget about us. We're gonna be here dealing with this for years.
We needed help. And nobody was coming. And we finally realized that, and that's when everybody in the community jumped in.
I wish I would have known how much good can come from your house burning down. I never knew such kindness existed in my community.
I'm trying to clean up the world one pickup load at a time. May not make a difference, but hell, it's better than shooting pool all night.
I hope I can rebuild it. I want to get the people back out here that helped me, that had my back.
This place, it means everything. It's my piece of Texas. Everybody wants a piece of Texas. I mean, we got almost 2 acres of it. And I'm gonna die right here, I know that. I love it.
When I look at the beauty of this universe, and I look at the beauty of the land that I'm on, I don't think about just myself. You gotta leave things better than when you found it.
I want to follow every single one of those characters. And yeah, I just appreciate that you add this therapeutic and kind of restorative element to your work. Acknowledging that there's so much digital output that's going to come from these stories and making sure that they're still cared for.
I have to give one more shout out. Amy, who lost her husband to extreme heat when her daughter was 2 months old. I mean, it's the most horrifying story. And she has did a panel with me once at Tribeca Film Festival and brought the entire house down, hysterically laughing, talking about how badly she wants oil executives to have their mistresses walk out on them, and she doesn't want them to ever get laid again. Like, these people have dark humor that can they're powerful humans. Anyway.
Wonderful. Awesome. So Max, could you tell us more about Rebuilding and what led you to want to create that film?
Sure. Hello. Hi, everybody. Hi. Yeah, Rebuilding is a film that came out last year at Sundance. It's a fiction film, and I guess I'm sort of the odd duck here, I suppose. Or like the weirder uncle at the end of the family dinner table, like dealing with feelings and the dissociated concepts of truth, and impact is indirect, if anything. But it's what we hope for, and at the end of the day, all the work is just like some sort of instrument of hope. And anyway, fucking Rebuilding is it's a story filmed in Colorado, where I live and grew up, in rural Colorado, that basically follows a rancher who loses everything in a fire and winds up in a small FEMA camp with, you know, other folks who share nothing but that they've all lost everything as well. And it's kind of a very patient community and redemption story, and the story about this kind of proud, isolated, like, farmer who winds up, I suppose, discovering not just that, like, he needs to be there for people, but that he needs those people as well. Yeah. And it's about the, I suppose, most simply the communities that emerge in the wake of disaster, as in that incredibly melancholic, bittersweet way they unrelentingly do every single time. The, like, genesis of the story, I guess the original one, like, it really goes back to, like, I suppose being kind of raised by well-intentioned environmentalists in the 90s in a very, like, only you can prevent forest fires, only you can kind of prevent climate change, you know, like, turn off the sink while you're brushing your teeth household, which is sort of true, but also, like, I don't know, that perhaps there's empowerment in that. There was also, like, immense guilt. Yeah. And it wasn't totally true, you know, and, like, Dick Cheney and ExxonMobil were very happy that, like, 5-year-old Max was, like, didn't want a campfire when he went camping. And whatever, it was like the future was just doom, you know, and if you'd ever asked me, like, where would you be at 32, I would certainly not say, like, on a stage with Christmas trees and at the Impact Lounge. Like, I would have been like, well, I don't know, like, is there a world? I don't know. And if you asked me about 42, I would have to give the same answer. And yet, here we are, strangely. And anyway, in 2020, a particularly dry year, and I guess also just, like, growing up in, like, a rural place, drought was just, yeah, it's just so clear, you know, like, sometimes there's water in the streams and sometimes there isn't, and it really affects your life so immediately and severely. And so imagining living in a drying world was, it wasn't imagining, actually, it was extremely real. And then, sorry, I'm supposed to talk about the movie. The movie came because basically my grandmother's house burned down in a fire, which was initially, like, the nightmarish confirmation of all childhood fears of having a world to live in. And it was a really, like, magical place in my childhood, that house. There was a stream. There were, like, incredible trees. It was like a paradise for a kid. It, like, reminded me of the Shire, and I would pretend to be a hobbit. And and anyway, I was really scared to go back and see it, and delayed doing so long enough that when I did, what had happened, and this will be familiar to some of you perhaps, is, you know, the trees were charred and blackened and kind of lifeless, but there was, like, a sea of green regrowth beneath all of them. And it's, like, the mother of all cliches, of course, you know, but it was, like, just one of those, like, wildly epiphanous moments of like, oh, like this is why people paint rainbows, you know, just like you could spend a lifetime trying to capture that like clearest, most beautiful symbol and image, and you could never do it. But like art exists just to try to, you know, and the world somehow didn't end. And then, you know, after that cliche image, like the other slightly less cliche, but still kind of cliche images rolled along, and like the community began to care for each other, and got to know all these other people on this mountainside who I hadn't before, even though we'd all been neighbors of a kind. And that goes on, you know, the clear up, the rebuild, whatever it is like a very slow, uncertain thing, and some people will never come back, and what can seem like a shocking number of them will and did and do. And yeah, so the film it started as like a tribute just to that strange process, and as I wrote it over the years and worked on it, my mom kind of took over the property and began to, I don't know, like plant wildflower seeds, and there's like a yurt now, you know, and there's no plumbing or anything, and it's not a home, you know, and it's like not the same, and it sucks still, but like it is also very beautiful again. I don't know, and then there's not words for whatever the rest of it is, which is why you make a movie, I guess, and then it's ironic to then put it back into words, but anyway, so that's what was like chasing in the story, which is not literally about any of that. It all becomes a fable because it's just too hard and weird to like, I'm not gonna like cast someone to play my grandma yet.
It's
thank you.
Yeah.
It's such a good movie.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story, and it is personal. You know, you're not the odd one out. You're coming from a family of survivors, and you created some beautiful art and storytelling out of it. Let's go ahead and check out a clip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Days. I guess that's their legal obligation. There's fires in California, Idaho, Oregon, floods in Mississippi, and overstretched. Budget got cut, blah, blah, blah. And there's some trouble with the county about septic or something. Can't renew the lease on the land.
Where will you go?
Arizona, maybe. My sister-in-law has an apartment in Phoenix. Might be able to stay with her for a while. See if Lucy can finish up her school year there. What about you?
Montana, maybe. Cousin has a ranch there. Maybe she can use a hand in calving season. Maybe longer. I don't know.
Montana. That sounds nice.
All right. So, Max, your characters are living in FEMA trailers. We're about to get political. And And I think we're all aware that FEMA is not perfect, has never been really perfect. Some of the most pronounced examples of this have been Hurricane Katrina, and then now in this current, what are we going to call it, an administration, a fascist government, whatever we want to say, there's pretty much a likelihood that FEMA could be completely defunded or closed down. So just the fact that you had a lot of the characters who, were dealing with FEMA, trying to get resources, living in FEMA trailers, I'm just kind of curious about your perception of FEMA, just personally, whether it's from the lived experience of your family or just in your discoveries making the film.
No, I mean, I guess, I don't know. It's a vast question, but probably a fairly simple answer of it's like, of course, like critical and its imperfections are there because it is like under-resourced and understaffed, and we need it and will continue to need it along with anything else that exists to help anyone who doesn't have everything in the world, Yeah, I don't know. I remember like researching. I don't know. I've seen. I remember like the bewildering agony of waiting for FEMA to show up to like clear debris so that one could move back onto it, and like watching people who paid private companies like get it done very quickly in some cases, and how strange that felt to be waiting. And then I also remember like the awesome power of the federal government showing up at some point when it did, and in hazmat suits and with backhoes, and getting done in one afternoon what took the private companies like weeks to do on other properties. So yeah, I don't know. It's
mixed bag.
Yeah.
I'll just say, so we have a fire survivor on our team, and we had come to an all-team, meeting talking about, oh my God, I can't believe he's gonna just completely dismantle FEMA. These disasters are getting more and more frequent. The states simply cannot cover this all. It's going to be a disaster, a humanitarian crisis. And Erica, the fire survivor on our team, actually from Colorado, said, I don't know, man. I kind of feel like me and a lot of my neighbors feel like good riddance. And it was like a real level-setting moment for me of like, she since had as a totally different perspective, but it was like this realization that FEMA had mass imperfections. There was a desperate need for improvement, for addressing the fact that they weren't funded to be doing climate change level disasters. And at the same time, if, there's all of this very substantive reporting that Proud Boys and Oath Keepers go in now after disasters. It happened in Hawaii, it happened in North Carolina, and Proud Boys and Oath Keepers go in, clean debris, and use it as like a recruiting technique. In addition, there are all these now, it's like become privatized. If you are of means, you can pay to have, your property resolved in a way that others can't. And then what does that mean for our society? And so I guess I sort of, and we did have some people in our community in North Carolina that really felt so grateful for FEMA. Like it was like so needed. And so it's sort of hard to defend like this needed fixing, and also can we not completely destroy it so that we're all screwed? But I think that's a little bit of where I live. And truly, like, their reporting is that the Trump administration has pulled FEMA employees to work on ice, that there is like, but that there's actively that shift happening.
Yeah. And it actually makes me more curious for like a broader, more imagination-driven conversation, because we can't keep hitting these same walls. Everyone's like, what are we going to do for FEMA? How are we going to go against Trump? It's like, is Trump really a target? At this point. But we also see really great examples of, community organizing under, this current landscape, whether it's, existing mutual aid groups in Asheville, like beloved Asheville, that actually just really stepped up, got the proper resources to just continue to do the work to serve their communities, giving temporary housing, food, et cetera. And even what's happening now with ICE and, what we're seeing in Minneapolis with, masses and masses of people figuring out ways to house people, to protect people, to do anything that they can to continue to serve their communities and protect them from the federal government.
Yeah.
So I'm also kind of curious about what other entities that are community centered can we start to consider and think about? Does it always have to be about these policy platforms that we're trying to hit, or is there another world that we can imagine that is community centered and driven? Because I'm very inspired by the things I'm seeing in the US and globally as well.
I think the only one I've seen that's kind of interesting is this little pilot pipe dream of mine is sort of taking a cue from the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, but there's so many incredible climate change activists, and is there a world where we could start piloting, I know we've talked about this, piloting, having some of the climate change activists deploy to help out in communities, because they're in need and it's necessary. So anyway, more to come there.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Victor, Max?
What's the question?
I'm curious about, this is just like a broad, open-ended question. We're talking a lot about FEMA and, targeting them and, how it's inefficient, but I'm also curious about a community-driven model. What would that potentially look like? What would be successful? We're talking about disaster relief.
In Altadena, I know a huge resource for us finding people, there was this captain system, block by block.
Yeah.
The residents themselves organized right away, and they shared all these resources. They made this incredible infrastructure online where they had spreadsheets and Google Docs and shared all their resources. They the GoFundMes were incredibly well organized and well shared. So there was right away this infrastructure that happened, just grassroots instantly. That was a huge resource just for us to pull from to tell the story in the first place. That's how we found the people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And through extreme weather survivors as well, I should say.
Wait, actually, can I give one shout out?
Yeah.
There's an incredible woman, Amanda Rosa, on our team who's just a filmmaker, but also brilliant. And I think in her, I don't know how much it informed the work, but she speaks to people all the time, and the most traumatized were those who had lived through smoke damage, and she's just been on a one-woman mission to this is an interesting story. Please, more people should be covering it. And the fact that you took it in a non-traditional filming way to really show that the emotion of how trapped you feel, and anyway. Yeah.
And go ahead, Victor.
I was going to say thanks.
Oh. Victor, I have a question as well, just around your subject. So the folks that you were profiling are people that we would call, I guess, smoke damage survivors. So they're people that we would normally call or assume are lucky because they still have their house. But as we saw, it's they're in a paralysis somewhat. They're at a standstill because there's toxins. They can't do anything. They have to wear hazmat suits to survive. It's not living in your home. And what I've learned from the film and also in conversations with you and your co-director Olivia is that there's no funding that's coming in, from insurance companies to remediate, the toxic ash. On the federal, state, local level, there's not a lot of relief to support folks and that sort of aftermath. So do your subjects have a path or a vision? Is there any hope that they have about ways to tackle this?
Yeah, one of the participants in the film said that he feels like they're the lucky, unlucky ones. Their houses didn't burn down, so they still have something, but they're stuck in this limbo. Another person says it feels like they're still stuck in the graveyard. They haven't buried their dead. And so, yeah, they're totally stuck. And I don't know, humans are super resilient people. They find community, they move on. So I don't know where the hope is exactly. I don't know what, I feel I'm a filmmaker. I just want to tell this story. I feel like that's kind of the first step, and telling it in a way that's compelling, so people don't have to have an opinion about climate change or regulations or the government or anything. We're just telling this. We're just trying to shine light on this struggle that feels invisible. So I just feel it's cliche, but I believe in like the power of storytelling as like a first step. Like we don't know what the answers are or what comes next, but there's hope just in the act of recording something down for history and having people's stories feel like they're being heard. Like there's hope when we're there and we're filming them and they know that they're being heard. And there's hope, in places like this where we take this film and it helps facilitate these discussions, and hopefully, it just slowly by slowly we build hope, every step of the way. We're building hope here, I guess. Yeah.
And and just going back a bit about policy as well, like what you were saying, Max, earlier about like the memories of only you can stop forest fires and that sort of like personal responsibility. And there's some really great data from the Environmental Voter Project that says about 76% of voters see climate change as a serious issue, but only 18% of them see it as political. So there's a really great opportunity there to get people oriented around like solutions-based organizing. So Sarah, I don't know if you can just share a bit more about like how you've driven some of your storytellers towards policy, getting them involved in lobbying, et cetera.
I don't think I was supposed to do this, but I'm just going to go for it.
Okay.
Get ahead of it. There is some incredibly, really smart groups thinking about smoke damage survivors in California and what they're really caught in limbo and what are some interesting policy solutions. And so I think through a mixture of trying to amplify your film and getting those stories out there, that there could be solutions. I mentioned the Colorado one just because this seems very like nitty gritty, but so in Colorado, we worked with some survivors and a legislator who was sort of going, it was an insurance-based thing. All these people didn't want their homes to burn down again, so they were sort of investing all this money in climate resiliency to rebuild, right? But then the insurance companies would screw them over and not actually like pay them out for it or incentivize it or anything. And so it was actually the first in the nation. There was a piece of law that passed that said insurance companies have to factor in this sort of climate work. I think the one piece that I was really proud of, our organization passed 2 bipartisan bills in Vermont and New York that basically, and centering storytellings. Like it was truly like the only reason it passed was that we took the specific people that these policymakers whose restaurants they ate at, and we amplified their stories of what it was like to survive this flood, and why are we the only ones paying? And now on law in Vermont and New York, with Republican support, oil companies have to chip in for those losses. And then the last one I'll name, yeah, seriously, and we had Republicans, the last one I'd just say is like I'm really, really proud of this work in California because we did a lot of work with LA fire survivors. There's this really beautiful mix of a bunch of local sister survivor groups and my organization that is looking at this sort of a twofold pathway. One, there's immediate insurance reform practices that need to be improved, transparencies, people getting complete illegal delays and denials, being totally screwed over by the man for insurance that they've been paid into for years. And so there's a look at just, doesn't touch climate change, but just look at immediate, reforms for individuals. And then the one we're sort of looking and taking real interest in is a similar, like our insurance company, I think we're about to hit an insurance crisis. And so in California, rather than continuing all these massive rate hikes, shouldn't we ask oil companies to chip in a little bit? And so we're sort of looking at a push there that I think will hopefully be coming real soon. And this is sort of outside of the question, but as you mentioned, the scripted versus unscripted, I guess I really, one plug to just watch Rebuilding, because to me, I felt like this was a perfect example of falling in love with a story and humans. And I'm like not being educated. I'm not like being force-fed my vegetables and like I'm watching something that's making me a better human. I just am absorbing a human experience. And I guess I'm just looking for more, this would be my plug.
we are building a database of these types of stories. And so for creatives or writers or journalists, filmmakers in the room, like, please feel free to reach out, because I think we really would love to find ways to just help good filmmakers, talented artists tell these stories in ways that people can actually emotionally feel them. Anyway, sorry, I went on too long.
No.
Proud of the work.
Cool. And I have a question for all of you, and maybe we'll have a couple minutes for Q&A. But just in general, we get told time and time again that these stories of survivors are depressing, or, like you said, eat your veggies, educational content that, people don't want to hear it, they don't want to be involved. But we're still entering this period where we are seeing a quick succession and kind of rapid acceleration of extreme weather events, not only just nationally, but globally as well. So how do we approach continuing to tell these good and important stories? This foundational work is really excellent, but what's the next step? Like, how do we keep this work going?
I have theories about art.
Okay, let's go.
Did anyone just see Union County, which premiered moments ago? Yeah, it's a Central Ohio opioid story, which is like really bleak, right? And it's like the loveliest, warmest film ever about. Sorry. Yeah, it's about people making their lives better. I think those who wind up on a stage with a microphone or, like deciding which way the camera points, it's an odd conflict, the urge to show people how bad the world is, because it is. But I don't know, like, in a very strange way, like, people know that, and like this idea of what could be, this idea of like possibility is a much stranger, much more difficult testing thing to display. But it does exist all around us in any neighborhood that's burned, in any drug court that's like seeing someone get sober. Like the day is saved time and time and time and time again. In working in fiction, I constantly have this guilt of the like it should be more direct, and this conversation is like affirming so much of that, in fact, because like you're doing like actual work, but like there is this other thing of like a world that can be possible and beautiful, and like I truly do believe it can be so. I actually forgot where that started, but
it's okay. But I mean, that's where art serves us, right? That's the vehicle for imagining a new world, imagining what's possible.